WRKS Pickens Jackson.
1, 2, 3, go!
The 50,000-watt sports powerhouse. Streaming live worldwide at thezone1059.com and on your radio.
This is it.
ESPN 105.9, The Zone. WRKS Pickens Jackson.
All systems go.
Live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge inside the Bank Plus studio.
This is now Warning.
Live in the studio.
It's the Out of Bounds Show with Low Bounds. Streaming live worldwide on the Out of Bounds radio app. And on your radio at ESPN 105.9.
All set? Let's go.
The Zone.
Whoa. You know you got to have some out of bounds. I mean, it's what carries the station in the state of Mississippi, right? The number one sports media platform, show, monster. Welcome in. Good morning. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. The Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The show is powered by the Golden Moon Casino Sportsbook and award-winning Dancing Rabbit Golf Club. We are streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. How about that? And several different ways that you can get in touch with us. Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line, 601-707-3750. Twitter handle, @BoBounds. In the Mississippi Ag John Deere Tractor text line is 601-885-3776. Welcome in on a special edition of the Out of Bounds Show. We'll be with you from 10 a.m. till noon. So, grab a Guinness, cup of coffee, Dr. Pepper, hang out with us. We'll have Cole Cubelic, SEC Network, former Auburn football player, Jocks in Birmingham, will join us at 10:30, 23 minutes on War Damn Eagle. And the new Auburn head coach, Bryan Harsin, who was the head coach for Boise State, baby, and played at Boise State, coached at Boise State the majority of his career, had a stop in Texas and Arkansas State and Eastern Oregon, but has spent a lot of time at Boise as a player and a coach. And he did a good job following Chris Peterson. I mean, when you follow the legend, that's extremely difficult. Most of y'all know who Chris Peterson is. He kind of put Boise on the map. And, they had all that razzle-dazzle going on with the Blue Field and beat Oklahoma and years ago in the Fiesta, maybe 06 or something. And then that dude asked that girl to marry him.
Proposed to his cheerleader girlfriend. Yeah,
Yeah. That's what it was.
That was the Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty.
They ran the Statue of Liberty and the hook and ladder in the same game to beat Oklahoma.
Beautiful. So Bryan Harsin is the new head football coach for War Damn Eagle. WDE, baby. Go ahead.
He's the big woof in the dog.
Well, he is now.
Is
he? It's a place where you're probably hired to, well, this is most everywhere, but even more so at Auburn. You're hired to get fired, but you leave wealthy. As Dave Bartu said last night, and Dave is the coaching analytics guru, right, in college football. He said they spent $25 million to hire Gus Malzahn.
2.0.
Okay, so, I mean, and that's fine. I mean, again, apathy sets in, coach fatigue. It happens just about everywhere unless you're Krzyzewski or, maybe Nick Saban. Not as long as Krzyzewski, but he's now been there for like 14 years. There's a few places you can hang around, but for the most part, they're going to run you eventually. Football, basketball. Baseball, you seem to be able to hang on, like Mike Bianco. He's won big, but hasn't won as much as people wanted in the postseason. Now, I'm a big Bianco guy because it's hard to win, and sometimes it gets weird in a game 2 of a super, game 3 of a super, but whatever. Mike's been able to, be at Ole Miss for 20 years, and it looks like maybe for 2 or 3 more at least. But Bryan Harsin was the head football coach at Boise. He spent 1 year at Arkansas State. And he went 69-19 at Boise.
It's pretty good.
Now, Bartu will tell you that they have the best players. Okay, so that's how you have to run these numbers. You know, when you hire a coach, has he had to take less and make more,
or is it always downhill?
Yeah, has he had to take less, make more? What did Mike Leach do at Texas Tech and Washington State? Took less, made more, and so it's interesting. Now there is strong discussion that Harsin told Auburn, I'll hire my guys. See, there's the rumors have been that Jimmy Rain, who's a brilliant businessman, Yellowwood, right? What they call him, the yellow fella in the 80s. And we've talked about him. He's a billionaire, rich dude. Jimmy can do anything he wants today, except evidently maybe hire this staff. And in other words, what do we talk about all the time? Jimmy can get on a really cool plane and he can get to Spain and be drinking wine this afternoon just in a few hours.
Most people answer that phone call.
Right.
Is what that means. He doesn't get put on red. Most people are answering.
No. And he has access to U.S. senators, presidents, and so on.
Yeah.
So, but somewhere along the line, I think Bryan Harsin and Alan Green may have put this together. A lot of people didn't think that Alan was going to have quite the oomph, assertiveness to make this happen. Alan Green's the AD, by the way, at Auburn. Really sharp guy, but people say he's a little passive. But he's new, too. And Auburn's a big monster. But maybe Allen pulled this off because Kevin Steele tried to pull this thing off in the back room.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe with Jimmy Rain. I don't know for sure. Cole may fill us in. He may not. He's got to be careful. Former Auburn player, does radio and jocks, whatever. I can talk a little bit more about, Jimmy Rain. Again, brilliant man, has employed a lot of people, given people the opportunity to pay their mortgages, save money, send their kids to college. When you have a monster like that, that's what America's all about. But he has no idea what he's doing when it comes to football coaches, right? And so the rumor is that Harsin will be able to bring his own people with him. And that's the only way it works, guys. You know how we talk about the Patriots and the Spurs and the Warriors? What does their ownership group do? They get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
On a much, 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 much smaller scale, my ownership group has never, ever, ever once in 2,500 shows since I've been with this place told me what to talk about on the air. I know people want to dream that up, but our ownership group has never once. We talk about revenue and things like that. We've never talked about content, topics, interviews, or anything like that. Not once. And now I think if I started talking about San Diego Padres baseball by about the fourth show, I would probably get a call with what in the hell are you doing? But we're not going to do that. I mean, I may do it in May around Tony Gwynn and Gary Templeton. But here's the deal. They dropped $25 million because they were tired of Gus.
That's it.
But they got a guy who's been a head coach. He's an offensive-minded dude. And he's had success, and he's been under Chris Peterson, and Chris Peterson was one of the best. I know most of you didn't keep up or track him, but he's been one of the best college football coaches in America, and he's an excellent coach for 20 years.
Yeah.
Between Boise and Washington. And he just did a great job. He knows what he wants to do. He knows who he is. He gets the whole thing, and then he locks in and they roll. And so he is a Chris Peterson protege.
Yes.
Bryan Harsin, new head football coach for Auburn. So Ole Miss and Mississippi State, that's who you will face. Bryan Harsin. And his wife's good looking.
He dominated teams for the most part that they were better than. In fact, of his 19 losses, 13 were from teams that he was better than. He was 6-6 against teams that out-recruited him. He moved their recruiting profile at Boise State up only 6 spots over 7 years.
In other words, you are who you are in recruiting. There's a couple out. When you hear Ed Ogeron talk about going and getting a recruiter, that's dumb. That's more proof that Ed has no idea what he's doing. Bryan Harsin doesn't need to go get a recruiter as defensive coordinator. He needs to get somebody who can run that unit A to Z, that division of Auburn football. Coach it, develop. Yes, he can recruit. But you gotta be able to call plays on Saturday in this league. So that's why when you hear Ogeron talk about going and getting recruiters, LSU's going to recruit at number 5 every year. Doesn't matter. He can hire Blake and I as assistant coaches. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Welcome in. 10 a.m. to noon. Here we go.
Hey, in December, we got basketball back in full swing and an extended football season. So there's never been a better time to get over to Ameristar Casino. With payouts averaging over $3 million the last 2 months at the end zone. Keith and the gang, along with our 17 kiosks, are all waiting to take your winning bet. And don't forget to download the app so you can preload your bets for the fastest service. Friday and Saturdays, you'll have a chance to win your share of the $250,000 in our Great Outdoors side-by-side giveaway. Hey, and it's never too early to make your New Year's Eve plans. We're giving away $33,000 in our See Ya 2020 Hello 2021 giveaway. Stay, play, and dine at Central Mississippi's premier gaming destination, Ameristar Casino Hotel. Gambling problem? Call 888-777.
The Out of Bounds Show is presented by Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools.
Oh, good morning, good morning. Sorry you had to listen to National this morning. Somebody dropped the ball. Live in the Bank Plus studio, Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, WRKS ESPN. We'll clean that up, though, quickly. Cole Cubelic will join us at 10:30. 20 minutes on Auburn's new head coach, Bryan Harsin. He's been at Boise State for several years. And spent a couple years at Texas with the Longhorns, 1 year at Arkansas State. It's not like he hasn't had fried catfish, turnip greens, hush puppies, blue plate, right? A little smothered covered pork chop. Butter beans, cornbread. So it's not going to be foreign for him. I mean, he's been to the state of Alabama. And I think most anybody in the game, regardless of where they coach, they understand the whole Auburn-Bama thing. Now, will he understand even more of it? Sure. But, he's not coming in clueless. A couple years at Texas, one at Arkansas State. But he's a Boise State guy. Played for Boise State. And then
Who'd he play for at Boise?
Houston Dale Nutt.
Houston Dale Nutt, baby. Let's go.
How does Houston Dale Nutt not get a job after Ole Miss? It's incredible. Holy moly.
Do you know who just got a job that I never would have guessed would have gotten one before Houston Dale Nutt?
Terry Bowden.
Terry Bowden. Got hired at ULM. Terry Bowden hadn't coached football in 20 years.
Yeah, he has. He's been up at Akron.
Nobody.
But, Terry's probably, top 5 coach in the last 25 years?
I can't believe that. That was incredible when I saw that news break.
Yeah.
But Houston Dale doesn't have one, man. I gotta feel like he's right
Houston, should we just... The whole second hour may be Houston Dale Nutt. Yep. That guy, man, what a quirky dude. But I did enjoy having dinner with him. He's a weird dude, though. In a good way. He's
a ball coach.
He played for Houston Dale before Houston Dale went to the University of Arkansas?
That's right. When Houston was at Boise State, Bryan Harsin was there. Now Bryan Harsin, after leaving Boise State, which hard to do. Hard to leave the alma mater. Obviously, Boise State's not high enough up on the list to be a lifer there, but it is. I mean, he got to spend 7 years coaching at his alma mater where he played. So this will be his first big jump into the big boy coaching circle.
Woo!
Not that expectations aren't super high at Boise State, which they are.
They are, but it's still a different animal, man. You're going somewhere. You're hired to get fired everywhere, but even more so
at Auburn. Gus Malzahn averaged almost 9 wins, 8.875 wins a season. That takes out this weird 10-game schedule of this season, where he went 6-4, which wasn't bad. I mean, he had a couple games that could have gone either way, but they went 6-4. They had a 2-game over 500 record in a season in which you only played SEC games. But 9 wins a season, how do you beat that? If you're walking into a situation where it's like, hey, Brian, the floor to not get fired is 8-4. Don't do it 3 years in a row or we'll still fire you.
Yeah, and then Bartu drops that they're really a 6.8 win team per year when you look at recruiting. Woo! Look, someone in Montgomery, Opelika, Mobile, Birmingham, wherever, couldn't wrap their brain around that today. They just can't. They're fans. It's okay. I mean, Ole Miss and Mississippi State think that they're 7-5 programs. Like that's where and Bartu's like, no, you're really a 5 point. If you run the numbers on recruiting, here's what you are. But anyway, the point is, Auburn is now the fourth ranked recruiter in the SEC West, and they don't have much of an advantage when they go on the road to Starkville, Oxford, and Fayetteville. Now, I know they won in Oxford and Starkville this year. I thought they were very fortunate to win against Ole Miss. We know what Mississippi State went through. Auburn dominated the LOS. You know, the Mississippi State offensive line had no answer, blah, blah, blah. But here we go. So now this comes down to who's he going to hire? Will they get out of the way? And I guess get out of the way as much as Auburn can get out of the way.
Any faith that Bryan Harsin has the backbone, and I don't say that in a mean way, but like to manage boosters the level of Auburn? You know, that was the big issue with, like, Freeze didn't know how to manage the culture on and off the field, like those two worlds colliding.
He couldn't manage the party boys.
Does Harsin does he have that in him? Boise, I'm sure, has.
I would think so, because he has run his own shop and ship for some time now.
Yeah, 7 years now at Boise State.
Yeah, so I don't know if Bryan Harsin is really going to give a you-know-what about, hey.
What Jim Bob wants.
Well, you know, I'm Craig Smith from Opelika, and I have a big company.
Yeah.
Great, Craig. We hope you continue to buy your box. Mm-hmm. You need to load up on Auburn War Damn Eagle gear.
Yeah, we'll invite you
anything
to
else?
the
I
parties.
got about 10 more seconds here. Yeah. Here's as he goes, well, here's what I think you should do. You're already moving to another group in the whole meet and greet, beer and barbecue thing whenever they feel comfortable doing that because of COVID. So
that's the key to success, right? At the very basis of being an SEC head coach, it's being able to maintain on the field things and off the field things and not letting those two bleed over too much.
And honestly, it's surrounding. You need a chief of staff. You need a chief of staff that is willing to
jump on grenades
and call you out.
There you go.
At times,
some honesty.
Yeah, most of these guys, Dan Mullen, Nick Saban, Lane, I would, the overwhelming majority of them don't have anybody that will call them out, and you need that. See, it's funny. We've had basketball emperors in college basketball forever.
Yeah,
we didn't really have football emperors. Now we have football emperors where no one tells Dan, Jimbo, so on.
Would you put the original Bowden?
I don't know if Woody McCorvey is. It sure seems like. No. Hold on. In the Clemson way, Woody is his chief of staff, and I think he's older than Dabo, about 15. I think he has the ability to walk in and not but go, Dabo, you handled this poorly.
Yeah.
Or here's what you need to do. You need to pick up the phone and call. They don't want to hear any of that. Everybody else runs around and gets their coffee and.
Yes, man. I mean, that's what we all surround ourselves with.
Nick Saban has never ordered a to-go. I mean, I wish I had. I mean, I hate ordering to-go orders for long. I mean, I sit there and think about it, and I'm like, I don't even want to spend 3 minutes on this. Nick Saban has never ordered food for himself in his life. It's there in the facility because so anyway, can Harsin have somebody that protects him, two, someone that will call him out? I don't know. I mean, do you think Kirby Smart has that guy? No. Is Kirby Smart going to make it long-term at Georgia? No. He
would have had way different offenses the last 2 years if he had anyone who could shake a stick in his face.
I think Kirby every year in the offseason is still always kind of going, should I go power I?
Perfect example is Ed Orgeron. He somehow lucked into Joe Brady because of the Saints relationship and because Sean Payton, someone who has the cachet to tell Ed Orgeron, here's what's really going on, was able to kind of push that the right direction. But Ed Orgeron, for his career, and I think we're going to see it again when he tries to replace Linehan, Insminger, the two OCs, and his DC Pelini. Yeah, among defensive linemen and other things. He's going to surround himself with people who want to do what he wants to do, who think like him.
Right.
We do that in all businesses. The best businesses are diversified in the way they have people who think different ways.
Sure.
When we surround ourselves with like-minded people, we get like-minded answers, and we stay swimming in a circle.
Right. That's you and I. We're all in water.
There you go.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, very true.
I mean, you're frustrating, and right. And for me, I mean, everybody gets along with me. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, WRKS.
Wow, what am I drinking?
Powered by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center, Lakeland. Their new surgery center and clinic, Lakeland Drive, Flowwood. Built for you, built for the patient, state-of-the-art facility. There's not a nicer one, but more importantly, the way that they laid it out. in the country. Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center, Fortification. Of course, been there forever since I was in high school, which was way too long ago. And then Lakeland Drive, Flowood. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone. Cole Cubelic coming up next. Played football at Auburn. On the sidelines every weekend in the SEC for the SEC Network. Jackson Birmingham. Cole Cubelic will join us on the Parish Cane Break Brewing Guest Line. The show is presented by the Charbroiled Oysters at Drago's Seafood Restaurant and Oyster Bar on the Hilton Jackson property across from Edwin White's Golf Shop on County Line Road. Cole Cubelic next.
This is the SEC Insider Hit. It's driven by the John Deere tractors at Mississippi Ag. Visit agup.com to find a retail location near you.
Let's go.
Man, there's always something going on. Deke Adams fired at Ole Miss, D-line coach. We'll get to that in the second hour. This is kind of weird and fun to be on from 10 a.m. to noon. I'm digging it. I may pour a beer for the second hour, though. Just want to be transparent with our listeners. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone. Big day for War Damn Eagle yesterday. I don't listen to Feinbaum, but I may actually tune in just to hear the crazies. Paul, I ain't never heard of Boise State. Live in the Bank Plus studio, the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, is driven by your next John Deere tractor at Mississippi Ag. 16 locations, agup.com. 2 in the metro area, Canton and Pearl. agup.com, Mississippi Ag for your next John Deere tractor. We welcome in Cole Cubelic, and Cole does a great job with the SEC Network, played football at Auburn, Jackson Birmingham, and Cole joins us on the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale guest line. Cole, good morning. Thanks for your time. What was your initial reaction when you heard that Auburn was hiring Bryan Harsin?
I think initially it was surprise because it was outside the box, outside of the family, so to speak. It was a different hire. It was a name that was sort of tossed around early in the process that I never really suspected was real, just because I didn't think that there were enough ties to the boosters to really be able to make it happen. I didn't think that there would be enough familiarity for there to be real interest from enough of the Auburn power brokers to actually go make it happen. But I was also excited about it because I've been around Coach Harsin. I've covered his games 4 or 5 times. I know him, and I know what kind of a guy he is. I know what kind of a coach he is. I know what kind of a leader he is. I know his demeanor. I know his attitude. I know what means most to him. I know how he carries himself. I know how his teams play. And that part of it was pretty exciting to me. So I understand the people who don't really know about him or know his name or know what he's done, but once you do get to know him, I think, and if you did, you'd be excited about what he's most likely going to bring to the Plains.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's a heck of a football coach, Chris Peterson protege. Not everybody in this part of the country, I mean, you and I are college football nerds, but not everybody was locked into what Peterson was doing at Boise State and Washington. Walt, you said, I know what he's about. I know his approach. How would you define his approach and philosophy as far as running a football program and what he wants to do, Cole?
I would say first laser focused. A guy that he understands, he's organized, and he understands the goals that are in front of him, and everything that he does on a daily basis is driven towards trying to make that happen. Delegating authority, organization are strengths of his. Goes back to the leadership aspect of it. Physicality and winning the line of scrimmage are going to be important to him. It's something that I think he's just going to place a premium on, and something that I don't think he's going to allow any of his football teams to get away from. He's someone who I appreciate the fact that he has a very serious demeanor, and someone who expects greatness in everything that you do, be it academics, meetings, film, game, practice. But his attitude, his demeanor, his emotions towards you are not going to change. So he's not going to be a guy that flies off the handle all the time. He's not going to be losing his mind at practice and in games. It's just that's not who he is. So I think that consistency kind of carries over to what his team is week in, week out. You don't get the influx of being a different team one week from the next week, because he is a very consistent individual himself. And I think his approach rubs off on his team. You see that in his teams and the way that they operate.
Cole Cubelic played at Auburn, SEC Network, Jackson, Birmingham. He joins us on the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale guest line. You're listening Out of Bounds. Auburn hires Bryan Harsin. He's a heck of a football coach, had a lot of success. I said this to open the show, and I think Cole can piggyback off this if he'd like. Harsin spent a year at Arkansas State, a couple years at Texas. He's had fried catfish and turnip greens and so on. He's been to the state of Alabama and Mississippi and so on. So he is familiar, even though he hasn't spent a lot of time here, he is more than familiar with the Sun Belt, so to speak, and how a lot of things work and how committed and locked in we are to football. How much autonomy do you think Bryan Harsin will have hiring his staff, Cole?
I would be, I think it's just hiring the staff. I think that he has carte blanche to go get who he wants and hire who he wants. Autonomy across everything related to football. I think I'd be foolish to ever truly believe that an Auburn head coach had control and power over everything that happens inside that facility and around that program. But I am told, and my understanding is, that when it comes to selecting his assistants and it comes to hiring his staff, that he does have the green light to go get whoever he wants. And that doesn't mean that he won't keep a Kevin Steele, or that doesn't mean he won't keep a Rodney Garner or a Cornell Williams or a Travis Williams. Might have some of those guys on staff. I think if there's a real positive with Bryan Harsin that I have heard and that I know, first, it's that he has a reputation of being a guy that's great to work for, of being a great boss and being a great leader. And he has a network that is not necessarily regional. I mean, you mentioned the places that he's been. He's been in Arkansas. He's been in Texas. He's obviously been out west. So he has multiple lines of guys that he can go to, potentially bring in as coordinators and as assistant coaches. He's going to have to get a couple of recruiters in, and SEC recruiters, not just recruiters, but guys who can recruit the SEC footprint. It's got to happen, and it's got to be a part of his staff. But as far as who he's able to get, my understanding right now, Bo, is that he can go get whoever he wants, and no one's going to be forced on him.
Do you think in the end, we've always heard about Auburn boosters meddling too much, even though this is a program that's been top 10, top 15 for all of my lifetime. Do you think that Alan Green, at the end of the day, kind of put it, drew a line in the sand, and he made this happen and he drove this thing? Cole?
I think this was Alan's move, and the way that I understand it and the way that it has been laid out to me was that Alan did this. This was a guy that was on Alan's list all along, high on his list all along. And I do think that some things had to happen. Some things potentially had to crumble, fall apart, before he was able to sort of step in and say, guys, why don't you let me introduce someone to you that maybe we can all agree on, that is not going to be a great fit for one side or one guy or some of the guys in this room that are making this decision. And I think he vetted the situation. He gauged the interest. He found out that it was there. He brought it back. He sold it to the committee. He got everybody on board, and then he went and made it happen. So I think Alan Green delivered on this. And I'd be silly for me, Bo, to sit here and say Alan Green did every single thing and found the money and did this all himself. I'm not saying that.
Sure.
But I'm saying, as far as who laid out the roadmap and who had the directions and who went and made the stops and did the heavy lifting, Alan Green's responsible for the majority of that. And he deserves credit for that. And I think that is a massive, massive step for Auburn athletics. The fact that you were able to move away from the good old boy network, just getting what they wanted and just doing what they wanted and settling for what they thought was best for them, maybe not necessarily for Auburn, and thinking outside the box a little bit and going to making a move. And I've already had the people say, oh, you didn't even mention this guy on your radio show, and we ain't heard you talking about him for 2 weeks. So what you know? You're right. And I think that actually is an explanation point on what I'm saying about Allen Green.
Right.
He kept this thing quiet because look, he was announced yesterday. They didn't start talking Monday, if that's the case. I mean, this has been ongoing. So this has been happening for over a week, and they were able to finalize it yesterday morning. So to think that they ran through Bill Clark, they ran through Billy Napier, Brent Venables turned them down, Sark didn't show up for the interview, and all of a sudden they said, well, call that Harsin guy. And they got it done in an hour. Right. That's just not a real thing. So I think even more credit goes to Allen Green because of the fact that he had been working on this and setting this up during all the other things that we heard publicly, a lot of which is just not factual. It's just not true.
And so he's got a little bit of Dan Hawkins, Chris Peterson, played for Houston Nutt, but the Chris Peterson link is, I think, the one that's strong and heavy. We're visiting with Cole Cubelic, played football at Auburn, SEC Network, Jackson, Birmingham. Bryan Harsin is the new head football coach for Auburn, and he spent 7 seasons at Boise State and he followed, Cole, you can weigh in on this. He followed a legend at Boise State, and they may not have won quite as much, but he knocked out several double-digit win seasons, some 12-win stuff. So you know how difficult it is to follow the legend. I don't care if it's Dabo, Saban, Chris Peterson. Talk a little bit about that.
It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be a task that has been easy for him at other points in his career. But I think he has an understanding of having gone through it a little bit at multiple stops, and he'll have, there'll be a little bit of that now because of some of the accomplishments that Gus Malzahn did have on the field. Multiple wins against Alabama, SEC championship game appearances, national championship game appearance. I mean, the reality is, when you just weigh the accomplishments that he's going to have to follow, those in and of themselves are going to be difficult. Not saying that he's necessarily following a legend in Gus Malzahn, but if you want to stack up all the accomplishments, you could make a legitimate argument that Gus Malzahn is the most successful coach in Auburn history.
Oh yeah, and what I was saying is he when he replaced Chris Peterson,
right?
The pressure of
being that there's going to be pressure here at Auburn, but going back to what you're saying, he understands what it's like to come behind the greatest coach in school history,
right?
And to be able to continue that and to be able to push that legacy forward. So he knows what it's like. He knows what it's about. And I think that he has taken a lot of what he's learned from Chris, be it system, be it organization, be it leadership, and he applies it to his daily life and his daily grind of being a head coach. But I also think he's his own guy in a certain sense.
Cole Cubelic, SEC Network on the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale guest line. You're listening Out of Bounds 105.9 The Zone. Auburn has a new head coach, Bryan Harsin, and he's been the head coach for 7 seasons at Boise State. But he did spend a year as a head coach at Arkansas State and 2 years with the Texas Longhorns. Blake, you have a question for Cole.
Yeah, Cole, what's Bryan going to be judged on? Because Chizik won a national title and was fired 4 seasons later for a poor winning percentage, 3-9. Malzahn averages 9 wins a season, goes to a title, goes to multiple SEC titles, and he was 2-2 against Nick Saban in his last 4. So I guess my question to you is, does Harsin have to go 10-2 every year and beat Saban once every 3 years? Like, what is really the measuring stick for the Auburn head coach to be quote-unquote successful?
I think he's got to be competitive in the West, and obviously that means with Alabama. I don't think there's going to be a coach in Auburn history that can just lose to Alabama every year and keep his job. That's not a real thing. It's not going to happen. And I think consistency more so than anything else, because you mentioned all of the peaks over the last few years, over the last 10 years. You mentioned all the times that Auburn was sitting on the top of the mountain. But what you left out were all the valleys, and that's what frustrates Auburn fans. And that's what Auburn fans were tired of. And, having strong performances is great, but the loss to South Carolina is inexplicable. The loss to Tennessee 2 years ago is inexplicable. I think because of the things that I mentioned with Harsin earlier that bring consistency to the table, how he acts, how he reacts, his attitude, his behavior on a daily basis in all situations is going to help bring more consistency to the Auburn football team. And that in and of itself, I think, is going to avoid some of those pitfalls. It's going to avoid some of those valleys. Maybe even in losses, it's not going to be frustrating to the point that it has been over the last few years. That, I think, will assist him in satisfying the Auburn fan base. But make no mistake, he's got to find a way to beat Alabama. He's got to find a way to compete for SEC Western Division championships. And I really only stop at the West because I think if you're competing for the West, then an SEC title and college football playoff will work itself out after that.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, Cole Cubelic on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone. Yeah, it's amazing. Blake told me this morning, Cole, I'm sure you already know this. In Gus's first 3 years, he won 27 games. All right, and I think people thought he was trending the wrong way, so to speak. In his last 3 years, he won 27 games. So it's just fascinating. I know the offense wasn't what Auburn faithful wanted it to be, but they were still winning games. And, think about what he's walking into, Cole. Saban just signed 24 and 5-star players just last week. I mean, I thought Saban may have been going kind of the wrong way, too, after last year. And, look, a lot of people think they're just going to stomp everybody in the college football playoff. Talk about the challenge of doing what you're talking about. And he needs to beat Bama once in his first 3 years, right?
Probably, yeah. I mean, unless you won every other game, and then you're still going to have people complaining. I mean, if you had 3 losses, if you were 33-3 your first 3 years, Auburn fans would complain about that because most likely that's going to mean no trips. That's also going to mean no trips to Atlanta, and no division titles if that played out that way, which is completely insane to think about. I don't think Nick Saban's slowing down anytime soon. I think he's got at least 5 more years. And what part of it points to it slowing down? Like you just said, another number 1 recruiting class. It looks like they're going to wrap up when we get to the normal signing day and things are all said and done. An undefeated season during a pandemic, playing only SEC games. An SEC championship. You look at the guys coming back next year, but it doesn't look like they're slowing down anymore. And even off the massive losses that they had this past year, the guys they lost on the defensive line, the guys they lost on the offensive line, the guys they lost in the backfield, the quarterback that they lost, the receivers that they lost, and they might be better offense this year. So they're not slowing down anytime soon. But that's where coaching comes in. You got to find a way to go in and have a system, have a scheme, have checks, have plays that don't necessarily rely on 5-star talent just to be able to win games. You got to find a way to go out coach people. And I think Bryan Harsin is smart enough to be able to go find people to help him do that. I don't think Bryan Harsin thinks he can go. I don't think he thinks he's good enough recruiter to go out and sign enough players that are just going to be able to throw the ball out there and beat Alabama. And the other challenge with that comes with Texas A&M. Jimbo's trending the right way.
Mm-hmm.
LSU has a ton of young talent. Now, we don't know what the staff is going to look like, but you look across the board at the way, Keyshawn Boutte has more receiving yards in the game than any player in SEC history. The kid's a true freshman. And guess who was throwing in the ball when he did that last week? A true freshman.
Right.
With 2 true freshman corners starting and a sophomore corner that didn't play in the last game of the year was probably the best corner in the country. They got a freshman D tackle that's starting. They got a freshman edge rusher that's starting. LSU's got good freshmen all over the place. They're young talents on par with anybody else in the league. We've seen what Lane's doing at Ole Miss. They're going to score points. They're going to be dangerous every week. Arkansas is trending up. Sam Pittman's probably coach of the year for a lot of people in this league. We know the air raid is going to be difficult to defend, and that thing looked better and better and better. After the Alabama game, that thing just kept getting better. And I think Will Rogers and some of the young receivers and backs on that team are going to be able to improve the next few seasons. So it's not just going to be Alabama. There doesn't seem to be a lot of teams in the West that are going backwards. And that might be the most difficult task, is just the division that you play in is not going to allow a lot of teams to go undefeated or be one-loss teams.
Yeah, out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone. He is Cole Cubelic on the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale guest line. SEC Network played at Auburn, Jocks in Birmingham. Let's switch gears here. Tennessee, this doesn't look good. Fulmer comes out and says he's, gives him the stamp of approval. But this investigation could lead to possibly, a fire with cause where they don't have to unload a ton of money. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I think it doesn't look good for Jeremy. If this is the magic 8 ball and we just shook it up, I think it's going to come up outlook not so good. I'm glad that he's going to get another year to prove what kind of a coach he is. But you've already had one quarterback leave. It looks like another quarterback's going to leave, so you're not going to have any real options there. You're going to roll some assistants. Offensive line coach is out. Fire defensive line coach middle of the season. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 other moves on that staff. So we don't even know exactly what it's going to look like for next season. But I hate it for him because I do think that Jeremy could get it right. I thought he had a good staff when he got there, and it just hasn't happened. And I think the pressures of that job are probably greater than a lot of people think. The expectations for what they are right now are a little bit out of whack. This is not 98 Tennessee. This is not Peyton Manning, T. Martin, Jamal Lewis, and those guys. It isn't. It's not who they are right now. And it's going to take time to get it back. So, and then on top of that, with some of the other stuff that parents are saying about their kids and recruits and other things, it does not look like there's a lot of parts of that thing that are heading in the right direction. So the next 3 to 5 months, I would say, are going to be very interesting to watch on Rocky Top.
Yeah. The NCAA hovering around, I think they're waiting to see where this thing goes, and it could get them out of whatever it is, $12 to $15 million. So we'll see how that. I don't think he's ever going to get the offense up and running. Real quick on Auburn,
which they need because financially they're in trouble. Which sounds crazy, but by SEC athletic department standards, Tennessee is not on near as good a footing as the majority of the other schools in this league are.
We'll leave it there. Cole Cubelic, SEC Network, Jocks in Birmingham, played ball at Auburn. Auburn with their new head coach, Bryan Harsin from Boise State. Cole, we appreciate it, bud. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Thanks, bro. Talk to you soon.
Cole Cubelic on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, talking Auburn football. Alan Green, athletic director at Auburn, played baseball for some guy named Maneri at Notre Dame. And it looks like he made the call, and good for him. He goes out and he identifies a good coach. I don't know if it's going to be a great hire. How many are great hires, right? Dan Mullen was a great hire. We know about Saban, but in the SEC, Mullen was a great hire for Mississippi State. Freeze for a few years. But how many great hires have you had? Dan just got a show cause at Florida. Now, all the penalties were for the 2020 recruiting cycle, and nobody can recruit.
It's the greatest penalty ever.
I'm watching Tennessee Volunteer insiders go, boy, this is going to hurt Florida's recruiting.
It's already over.
Did you read it? It's already been done.
He's got 4 days next fall, and that's it.
I think in January or something.
Yeah, it's something dumb.
And man, when you're Florida sells itself. That Florida pullover, that Florida hat.
Let's be real clear. LSU's walking into what looks like some serious nonsense off the field with their athletic department, and they signed the number 4 class in the country.
Right.
18-year-old kids aren't exactly paying attention to that.
They're not. So, Mullen got a show cause for – it didn't look major.
Recruiting a junior is basically what it came down to.
And what I've told you, the Mitch Barnhart, Greg Burns, Scott Strickland, John Cohen approach is not to do what like Ross Bjork did, fight it out in the street. They're more prone to give up more on the front and in the investigation. But look what they did with Will Redmond. We'll be back in a minute.
Malone Roofing Shingle Division is proud to be your preferred GAF Master Lead Contractor. And with their help, we at Malone protect what matters most. With the help of 3D home mapping software, phone or video conferencing, and electronic signature forms, Malone is able to provide a uniquely remote experience to meet the challenges of this ever-changing world. Schedule your free storm evaluation, even if you've initially been denied your claim, by filling out our contact form on ecmalone.com or by calling 1-833-7